Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 2 of Touchline Banter. I'm your host, Shayan Karimi, alongside my co-host, Ruben Chavez. We're back. We were both on a little bit of a vacation hiatus. I was over in Europe. Ruben had a nice long weekend. How was your vacation, Ruben?
It was great. The long weekend was great. Nothing like going to a cottage heading into Labor Day, but excited to be back with you. Excited to be talking some football. So the vacation was nice, but I'm ready to get back to work. What about you?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy your vacation?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Europe's beautiful. There's like not nice place to visit. I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful country. Barcelona was amazing. They have the second best team in Spain, but I mean, according to the table, not. We're getting a lot of backlash for that, but
Yeah.
beautiful city. I enjoyed it a lot. It's always nice to see family. But there was a lot of footy going on, lots of transfer rumors. The Premier League is kicked off. All the leagues in the Europe have kicked off, and lots of news to break down. So yeah, this is Touchline Banter. We're going to offer some expert analysis, some thought-provoking opinion, and we're going to get a little bit of banter as well, I guess, between the two of us.
Absolutely.
This will just be fun. But let's jump right into it. We're just going to touch on a couple big moves on the end of the transfer window. And Ruben, let's start with you. I'm going to get with Raheem Sterling. He's gone on a loan move to Arsenal of all teams. We know he was linked with a lot of different teams in the Prem, Man United. I heard even Tottenham and other teams being linked with him. To me, this looks like a bit of a coup for Arsenal. No loan fee at all. They're paying a third of his wages. So Chelsea's basically paying like 200,000 euros a week or pounds a week for him to play for their London rivals. Like, is this an absolute steal?
It's like a no-brainer. And obviously, I think if you're an Arsenal fan, there might be a part of you that's like, well, why couldn't we have gotten Ivan Toney, who ended up going to Saudi Arabia, or like a Jonathan David, or one of these other strikers that was on the market, quote unquote. But Arsenal or Arteta obviously felt that those players didn't fit their profile. Maybe the money wasn't right. You're getting Raheem Sterling, and despite his warts and his shortcomings, he was a part of a Manchester City squad that was a perennial winner and was playing at a high level. He knows Arteta because they worked together when Arteta was on that staff. And again, you said the important parts: no loan fee, and they're paying his most of his wages. So it seems like Arsenal is doing a reclamation project again. And if you look at Havertz and the way he came in, and people were like, well, does Havertz really have it? Yes, Havertz is not Erling Haaland that's scoring goals, but he's a really good front attack line player who can move well, play with the ball. And Raheem Sterling offers you a lot of that tactical flexibility. We talked about it when they brought in Calafiori. It seems that Arteta, very much like Pep, wants football players that he can mold into his system and that can play in various different roles. The more flexible you are, the more opportunities it gives them. I think it's a no-brainer for them. It's a great move. And it's crazy that Chelsea are in a position that they have to give a player of that quality to their rival, I think.
Yeah, it's odd for me, the situation with Sterling, because I do think he's a system player. I do think that Manchester City system and Pep and Arteta, when they were there, they elevated him to the heights that we saw, and he was scoring a lot, assisting a lot. He can play on either wing. He is a great player when he's on form, but he hasn't played a lot. Specifically, he's been in and out of the squad. He's definitely lost his form. I do think that if Arteta and Arsenal's squad can, give that resurgence to him and get the best out of Sterling again, he could be an absolute vital player. And I am hearing potentially that he could slot in as a backup, like kind of quote unquote number 9, to give Havertz a rest. Apparently they prefer Jesus on the right. That would be interesting for me to see. I think it's a pretty really cheeky move, because they waited and waited and waited right up until the end. And apparently they were in on it on a long time. And they kept saying, no, we're not paying a transfer fee. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on at Chelsea, an absolute basket case with their transfers. So many players. Apparently they had to buy like a second training ground or something because they're investing in land to fit all the players in. It's a mess. I don't know what's going on.
Well, it's also like Chelsea killed their, and I have a lot of sympathy for Maresca because he's the manager there at Chelsea, and he's not the one that's asking for these moves. He didn't ask them to sign 42 first team squad players. Obviously, no one would ask for that. And even if you did, you wouldn't expect for it to actually happen. I feel like that's like a kid asking for a dinosaur at Christmas. Like you just say it, but you don't actually. Yeah, so he came out and he was like, I'm not training 42 players. I'm training 21 players. I know the 21 players that I have my faith in and that I trust and that I want to develop into this team. Sterling was very clearly not in the plans once he got dropped from the first game. And Sterling's people released a message, and Maresca's basically like, yeah, still don't want you on the team. Like, you're not
Yeah.
that important to me. I don't think you fit. So it killed Chelsea's leverage, but I can't blame him because if you're a manager, why would you waste your time trying to coach someone when you have that many people to coach already that you don't really see fit? It sucks for Raheem Sterling to kind of have had to deal with that, but I think he's in a better place. So I mean, I guess everybody wins except for
Yeah.
Chelsea. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it was weird that you touched on. I mean, this situation with Maresca when he basically comes out and he's like, "Yeah, you're not playing. Just
Yeah,
figure it out." Yeah,
to
just figure it out. I don't.
to
Yeah,
an
I
England
don't care.
international and a Premier League winner. He's like, no,
No,
please.
we're good. Yeah, bye. But yeah, it was interesting how like Conor Gallagher and other players, that they Ben Chilwell, they've said, same situation, but they're kind of stay quiet and they're apparently like, some of the leaders in the locker room. But I find it funny how Sterling's people, which is Sterling and his agent, they come out and they make the statement like right before the game. But to wrap this up, I think he's in a better place. I agree with you. I think if anyone can get the best out of him, it's Arteta.
For sure.
It looks
For sure.
It looks pretty good. Let's go over to the second move. Kind of really surprising move. Victor Osimhen, apparently a striker that everybody wanted. If you play career mode, you probably sign him in every single team that has ever needed a striker. I thought he was one of the most demanded, one of the better strikers in Europe. But to Galatasaray, this is very, very surprising for me. I've heard that he apparently could leave early in even like 4 months. There's some like intricacies to the loan deal. Apparently he turned down Chelsea. Again, sorry, we're not bashing on Chelsea, but I can imagine why he didn't want to go there with João Felix moving in. But what do you make of it? But like he was kind of shunned out of the squad with Conte. It was weird to me.
Yeah, it's strange. Conte clearly didn't want him. Why Conte didn't want him, only Conte knows. No one loves Romelu Lukaku, and I think even his own family would say they don't love Romelu Lukaku as much as Antonio Conte loves Romelu Lukaku. Anywhere Conte goes, he's like, bring me that big Belgian back to goal. He'll score 5, 3 of them will be offside, but we'll be okay. We'll figure it out. It's a weird move. It seemed like his time at Napoli was coming to an end. He wanted to leave. Conte was fine with him leaving. I think he more wanted to keep Kvaratskhelia, Scalia, and one of them had to go eventually. Napoli's not a team that generally spends a high wage bill and keeps all these superstars. So it was always going to be he's going to take a step forward. I'm surprised PSG didn't really go over the top on an offer. Maybe they felt Napoli's asking price was too high. They're also going through a weird transition period where it's not the PSG Galactico, the oil tycoon team anymore. There are a lot of youth players, a lot of younger guys, and the stars got bombed out, obviously. And then the other big one was Chelsea. And like you said, it seems that he turned it down. It seems they were interested in a loan deal, probably because they don't have a lot of money with all the other contracts that they've had. And he was not interested in it. You touched on it. The contract, from what I've seen, it's being reported that he does have an option to leave in January if a team reaches certain parameters or whatever. It seems like it was the only way to make sure that he's going to play because Napoli were threatening to hold him out and maybe recoup some money in the January transfer window for him. And it's like the only thing that could help both parties. It is crazy that he's playing in the Turkish league though, like insane. And I know Jose Mourinho is so mad right now because he's going to the biggest rivals, the team that won the league last year, like by a point. Like both teams played extraordinarily well, and now he's joining that team. So it is a bit crazy, but it seems like it was either that or he wasn't going to play for 4 months. And I think once that was on the table, it became an easy choice.
Yeah, that does make more sense of the situation. I was reading about it more recently today, but I think, yeah, just like you said, it's probably just him just saying, I want to play and I'll just go where I'm needed and I want to be on form. I want to get minutes under my belt. And again, I think Conte just loves Lukaku so much that he's willing to sacrifice Osimhen. I don't see it, but again, I'm not the manager in Napoli, so obviously he's smarter than we are. I guess it's going to work. I mean, Conte has a pretty decent track record. But I think probably he goes to a bigger team in like 4 months. Yeah, I think he plays well.
I don't think he'll be. But again, if you're Galatasaray, that might be all you need. Like, I'm sure that there's a derby game with Fenerbahce before that. So you're just going to play that or Besiktas or whoever, all the big teams in Turkey. You'll get some of those fixtures out of the way with Victor Osimhen in the starting 11. those points are crucial in a league that really has a couple teams that are fighting for the top spot, right? So I'm sure they're not upset, even if he leaves in January. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean the level of like football, obviously in Turkey is a step lower than Italy. I mean, it's not. It's still a pretty big league. We saw a lot of good players coming out of it, but man, like that atmosphere there is probably going to be absolutely crazy. Like I think it's one of the best atmospheres to play in as a player.
Oh yeah, the fans are crazy. All the flares, the tifos, it's awesome. He'll enjoy it. He'll be a star. The Galatasaray fans are probably kicking themselves, like sometimes we can lose sight of this. Not just me and you ourselves, because we cheer for a team like Madrid who gets these big players when they're in their prime. But if you watch like leagues like the Premier League or the Spanish league historically, and even the Italian league, like you're used to players coming over in their prime or right when they're about to break and hit like superstardom. These other leagues, like, yeah, the Portuguese league sees them as they're climbing. The Turkish league may see some as they're climbing and some as they're leaving. But like Adra Güler's not there. Like all of the talented players leave and they're not really replaced by superstars. They're replaced by older vets or younger people to see how they develop, and that's fun. But to have a legit bona fide superstar, a dude who's going to sell T-shirts, who kids are going to want to change their hair to look like or whatever,
wear the masks.
Yeah, like that's cool. When you're a kid and when you're trying to build a fan, like a fan base, those are the things that matter. Like when you're a kid, I remember how cool I thought like Neymar's hair was, or like Ronaldinho and the little flicks and tricks he did, or Kaká. Like those are the players that when they're playing on your team, you're like, oh man, like this is awesome. Even David Beckham. Like I've never been a huge fan of the England national team. But when he was on Madrid and he was one of the Galacticos and the blonde hair and the free kicks, and you just get into it. So I'm happy for the fans. I'm sure they're loving it.
Yeah, it's going to be great for Galatasaray. And like just to touch on the atmosphere quickly, I remember in Toronto when there was the Blue Jays game and someone threw like a beer onto the field and there was like a whole federal investigation. They're like, oh, we found him, we used the cameras, and then meanwhile like they're throwing actual balls of fire onto the pitches in Turkey, and they're like, yeah, it's a Wednesday, whatever.
Like as long as no one got caught on fire, it's okay. Yeah. Like it's fine.
Yeah. Gotta love Turkish football. Let's go over to the Premier League and let's break down the action that's happened so far. Do you want to start us off with the most recent game?
Yeah,
United Liverpool.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about this. And if you're a United fan and you don't like to hear negative things about your team, I would turn this podcast off or skip ahead 6 minutes, maybe 10. Like it, yeah. United got battered at Old Trafford, 3-0.
Say the least.
And it could have been more. I know people say that a lot, and sometimes that doesn't really mean anything. Like, oh, well, what does it mean that it could have been more? I mean that they could have lost like another 7-0, like or 9. Like Liverpool were all over them. There was a clip where it looked like they were doing a rondo on the side of the pitch in United's half. Yeah. It's like when a team is that dominant and they're literally not even using the dominance to exert pressure, but using the dominance to make fun of you. Is crazy. It reminded me of like when LeBron James on the sideline, like doing the water bottle challenge or whatever during the Heat era. Like, I don't know. If you're a United fan, and I know you want to talk about Ten Hag, and maybe we'll get to that right away, or maybe we'll talk more about the game. But if you're a United fan, what do you have to believe in? Because they narrowly beat Fulham. It was 1-0, and it was a late winner by Xerxes. They lost to Brighton on an extremely late winner. So again, if you want to say like, well, that's bad luck, but I was watching the game. It was a free header on the back post. Like he was unmarked. Like it wasn't, this wasn't like, oh, Brighton hit a tough shot or a ricochet. No, he was a free header on the back post. So if you're seeing these things, these mental errors, a team that seems like it can't compete, not even to the higher echelon. I know Brighton's a good team, great manager. They have some solid players. They've really increased their profile. United shouldn't be losing to teams like that. Like not the United that we know, not the United that they want to be. This United should be losing to everyone. But like honestly, because and I feel bad for some of the players, but then on some of the other players, I'm like, why is Rashford still there? Like, do you have an answer to that?
I don't know.
Because
vibes.
He wasn't good last year. It seemed like everything was set for him to leave. He's still there, still playing, even though he doesn't do it. Like I don't understand. I don't understand why he's still there. They lost Scott McTominay, which again, people are like, not the caliber of player, whatever. People can have their beef with Scott McTominay. How many game winners did he score last year? So if you're gonna play this style of like we're just on the edge of our seats, we'll take the lucky breaks as they come, and we're gonna get pumped. At least keep a guy that can get a goal off a set piece or something, because there doesn't seem, if there's a coherent strategy, they're not enacting it. And from the goalkeeper to the defense to the midfield, and the midfield seems to be the real issue. Casemiro in particular did not have his best game, but I don't know. It looked bad out there. It just looked bad.
I'm gonna be nice. So let's be nice first. And I'm
Okay.
gonna touch on the positive. Let's try and spin this, okay? So I'm trying to put myself in a United fan's shoes because like I'm a Madrid fan, you are a Madrid fan, but I like to see United compete. I loved watching Ronaldo there, Ferguson days. I appreciate seeing United at the top. It's a good team to watch. They usually play good football. It's a decent club. So I'm like the first game against Fulham. You can make the argument, oh, I guess, it's the first game. You get a narrow win. You just have to beat who is in front of you. You take the positives out of it. Xerxes scoring. Hey, you can put a good spin on it. I guess the Brighton game, it's the offside goal of Xerxes is really, really kind of like, it's really tough, but by the letter of the law, it's the right way. But like, man, no one was even marking the free header, and not even marking. It's like everybody was just looking in the opposite direction. Onana wasn't even looking at the goal scorer. It's as a team who has a deficiency on the back post. How is this not drilled into them? It doesn't make any sense. And let's focus on the game a little bit more first before I go in on Ten Hag, because again, sorry, United fans, but I'm gonna go in on this absolutely, absolutely clown of a manager. But you set up, and we talked about in our first episode, we talked about the transfers, and Mezraoui started at right back. De Ligt came. Meh. I mean, De Ligt has bounced around went to Juventus, the big signing over from Ajax. It didn't work there. He went over to Bayern Munich. He was in and out of the squad. Kim Min-jae was ahead of him. Upamecano was ahead of him. Same thing, Mezraoui as well. You look at the back line, it should work, but are these signings really that great? I'm not sure. I don't really think so. Maybe it is the manager. Maybe it's a company of like a combination of both. And yes, absolutely. We love Casemiro, an absolute Real Madrid legend, one of the greatest defensive mids that I've seen. He did have his deficiencies even at Madrid. And, when you have players like Modric and Kroos to cover you, and you go and you have, Kobe Mainu and you have Martinez and De Ligt behind you, obviously you're going to suffer behind it. But the tactical setup just didn't make any sense again. Like, they were so open in the back. They lost the ball in their own half over and over again. And going into this game, for some reason, like the bookies it was kind of even. I think I remember looking at it. Some were leaning towards United.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, especially with the way Liverpool absolutely trounced them. It was shambles, absolute shambles.
It's funny because I was looking into it before the game, and a lot of it just comes from the fact that this is the first time Liverpool beat United at Old Trafford in a long time. And United had beat them in the FA Cup last year. I think there was enough for people to be like, oh, United at home, maybe they eke out a draw or like a 1-0 win because there'd been some history of it. But I'm with you. It didn't make sense to me on paper. And speaking on the Casemiro thing, and I saw Rio Ferdinand kind of talking about this, and it's like, do you think that they brought in Casemiro to be a ball playing midfielder who is like playing out passes from the back and whatever? No. And if they did, then their recruitment is stupid because that's not what Casemiro does. Like you said, when he was in Madrid, he was a center defensive mid to the letter of that, like a shield in the defense. And in a team like Madrid that had their wing backs were so attacking, like Marcelo and Carvajal and at times Vasquez, he was just tasked with being one of the last men back, especially since people like Sergio Ramos or Varane at this day were always liable to just bomb up front, try to play a ball, try to make a run. So he didn't ever have to really make passes or play with the ball at his feet too much. He would just hand the ball off to somebody else who was a good player with the ball at their feet. I like Kobe Manu. I think he's a good player. He's still young and needs to develop. The problem that I'm seeing in this squad, tactically, they're setting up weird, and they're expecting players to do things that they're not comfortable doing, and they don't have the talent around them to prevent them from doing it. So it's like you're banking on these guys. I even like De Ligt. Like, I think he's a good player, but it takes time to get adjusted to the speed of the Premier League, the strength of the Premier League, and he has no one around him that's helping him. It seems like, so it doesn't make sense from top down. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think like Delict and Mazraoui and the players that they signed are not the problem. I do agree with you. I am very kind of wary on Delict just because he's bounced around from a lot of different teams. I do think in the right system he can grow, but you know, I guess I'm just gonna go into it now. Ten Hag, oh my God, how is this man still in the job? And I'm trying to be logical with this. I think I know why. I think because he won the FA Cup, and that kind of like put the club in an awkward position. We can't sack a manager after winning the FA Cup. I mean, you could, but like it's done before. Jose Mourinho was sacked at Tottenham before an FA Cup final. He didn't win it, but it's a similar situation.
Well, if you listen
But
to him, he would have won it. He would have won it.
oh,
That's what
he
he
would have won
says.
it. Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry, it shouldn't slay Mourinho like that. But my point is that I think they looked into the market, and the first choice wasn't there, the second choice wasn't there, the third choice wasn't there. So they're like, okay, maybe we wait around, we see what happens, maybe somebody becomes available. And okay, I get it. You don't want to put another manager in that position to fail again in a system that doesn't work with a bunch of new transfers. Okay, all right, I'll understand the logical aspect, but then for people who haven't seen it, please go watch the back and forth that he has with this reporter, Ian Ladyman, I think you
Yep.
said the name was.
Ian Ladyman.
And he calls him out and he basically says, like, your team has made these mistakes over and over again. And how are you sure that it's the players and not the manager? And Ten Hag all high and mighty as if someone who has like some Champions League pedigree or is apparently like going in like all like Jose Mourinho, like this is football heritage, is like, oh, well, what mistakes? And the guy goes and like fully lays out for him, like, oh, you're giving the ball out in the back, the defender's not in the right position, midfielders constantly getting caught out, you're too high up, you're tactically not set up correctly. He knows what he's talking about. And then Ten Hag comes back and says, "Oh, but we won the most trophies behind Manchester City in the entire Premier League, brother. You won two FA Cups, two FA Cups, and you almost lost to Coventry or whoever it was in the semi-final last year. So,
Yep.
Again, not to bash the FA Cup, it's rising and status. I feel like after it kind of like dipped and went down, but this whole like, oh, we are, we're still there and we're competing." I think when, like, not to get too philosophical, but when you make a mistake in life, the easy decision is to like, double down on yourself and to be like, no, you know what? I'm not wrong. Everybody else is wrong. The hard decision is to be like, you know what? Yeah, I made these mistakes and I need to own up to it. And I know he shouldn't give in to a reporter for United's PR sake, but man, he is so clueless. So clueless and just so, I don't know if his head is buried in the sand or he's just doubling down on himself.
I think that's the difficult part. And I agree with you. It's obvious that he's not going to go there and be like, you're right, the team is bad. I'm a bad manager. He can't do that. And he can't do that for United's sake as well. But it's weird because I know, again, there are some teams in football that I think people are like, well, these are the teams that have a system and they play football by that system and they live and die by that system. Like Pep Guardiola is always going to say, well, even if we don't get the results, and he won't say it like that, but it'll be like, we should have won because of this, the XG, we got in the right positions. Football just wasn't on our side today. It happens. The better team lost is what people who are proponents of a system will say. And then there are people that they're like, okay, well, our club is not a system club. It's a winning club. And that's more the Real Madrid and Carlo Ancelotti, where he changes the system and it doesn't really matter. It's like, are you getting the results? So it's like, okay, sure, the football didn't look beautiful. Sure, we succeeded 70% of the possession. But like Mourinho said, they can have 100% of the ball. I'll take the 3 points. And you have to be one or the other. Somehow he's straddling the line and being like, I have my system that I'm not going to change, that I'm going to try to bend these players to, but I'm also not going to win the major prizes, and I'm not winning enough. Because again, this would be a different conversation if he had brought them to the Champions League this season, if they had been in the top 3, maybe like in a real title race. Like we give Arteta a lot of credit, and I think he has a similar trophy. He has like 2 or 3 trophies. It's not like he has a lot more, but there's a plan. There's been steps forward. They are making, they're achieving things. They're back in the Champions League. They're performing at a higher level. You can't say any of that about United. I've done about trying to slate the FA Cup. Everybody watched that game. They could have lost in the semifinal. They should have lost. The offside was tight. So again, maybe should is not the right word, but in a different day, in a different league, or with a different line drawn, maybe they're not there. And that's what you're going to hang your hat on. And again, I understand you play the games that are ahead of you. Referees make mistakes. VAR isn't perfect either. Blah, 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 blah. But what can you hang your hat on as a United fan or even a player or a board member to be like, these are the steps that we've made to be a better team?
Yeah. I mean, I want to wrap this up a bit because we obviously have to go into some other teams as well. But when you look at United, I was like kind of maybe turning a page with them. I'm like, you brought in a new transfer director, you got a new owner in, investing more money. They brought new staff in. It's starting to look better. We're getting some more signings in, and I know that it's not just Ten Hag and it's not just the players. The systematic problem from the Glazers and Woodward down was what caused the downfall of United. It's not a coincidence that Mourinho and Van Gaal and all these other managers didn't succeed there as well. But with Ten Hag, the issue that I see is just the lack of accountability, the lack of him saying, I'm making a mistake and I need to change this. Because managers do come out and say that and say, I made the mistake and I'm responsible. And it is a tough thing to do. I will say this, Ugarte is coming in, and United fans, if you think Ugarte is going to become some savior to come in there, he's Casemiro, but just younger. He's not a deep line playmaker. There's a reason why Luis Enrique sold him from PSG. Enrique wants basically another Busquets at PSG. Ugarte is not that. Is he good at what he does? Absolutely. And yes, that's going to maybe they can play him next to Mainu, and Mainu is a young player. I like him a lot as well, just like you said, and he's very good on the ball. He lacks defensive capabilities. He's young, and he's going to get that with time. I believe he will be a good player for United. But if they think Ugarte is going to come and become some savior, you got a lot of stuff coming for you. And I'll pose this quick question. They have Southampton next, and then after that, they're playing Crystal Palace. If they don't get results, let's say they lose or draw or get some bad showings in those games, am I wrong to say that Ten Hag could be out in like October?
No, his job is on the line. Like from now on, every result is job's on the line. You can handle the losses to the big teams. Again, not quite this style of loss, but if they lose 2-0 to City, but it's a tough one and City have to crack them. But if they draw against Southampton, I don't think Southampton can beat them, but let's say they draw. They just let in a loose goal because that's something that can happen. They don't mark in the back post. And then they lose to Crystal Palace, which is something that can happen because Palace has surprised some teams, I think, so far this season. And despite being rated for players, they're a tough out. There are going to be questions asked about Ten Hag, and I think he could very easily be out by October.
We'll see. It'll be interesting. Definitely keep an eye on the tire fire that is Manchester United. Let's go over to a little bit of a less angry topic and a little bit of happier days. Let's go over to London. What do you think of Arsenal season so far?
It's been good. They looked really convincing in the first 2 wins. And I think the win against Villa specifically was important. There's the manager there. There's the history with Unai Emery. And, they also have the keeper that I hate, Emi Martinez. Sorry, I didn't mean to say keeper that I hate, but I forgot his name. Emi Martinez, who used to be an Arsenal player and now is a Villa player. Against Wolves and against Villa, they showed kind of how they play. Very defensively, like compact and solid. They don't make mistakes. They take the chances that are given to them. The Brighton game is a bit of a basket case. And to be honest, even when they were down a man, you could comfortably say that they had some of the better chances down the stretch, and they could have put some away. Saka had a couple that I'm sure he'd like to do better on. I think the yellow card, which I'm sure we can get into in a bit, the double yellow that turned into a red, kind of hung over their heads maybe and got them a bit rattled. But they do look like a team that can push for the title. The problem is the team that they're trying to push for the title against doesn't make these kind of mistakes. Like, it just doesn't feel like the game that happened against Brighton for Arsenal would never happen for City against Arsenal. And I don't know if you agree with that, but that's how I feel.
I think so. I do think like City has had those performances, especially against trap teams like Brighton, who was an up and coming one. I put them in that like Wolves, Crystal Palace, kind of Aston Villa bunch, like teams that are kind of mid to higher table, but you can definitely lose against them. In the game against Villa that they did win, I do think a lot of credit has to go to Saliba and David Raya. Raya made a lot of big saves. Saliba was excellent again. Kai Havertz has surprised me. I was very, very surprised that they didn't go in for another striker. I know, like, statistically, towards the end of the season, in his last few performances, even with Germany in the Euros, he has had a very, very high goal involvement rate. So he definitely can do it in that position. I think they're realizing that kind of number 8 role, like attacking mid / center mid, they wanted to convert him in, didn't really work out. So I guess they're trying to envision him as a center forward. I personally don't. I think he's kind of like the 9.5, if you call it, like a center forward who's not a center forward.
Yeah.
But let's see. But I thought just like you said, they showed how they played against Villa. Same thing with Wolves as well. I think against the Wolves they were a bit better. But the Brighton game, I did have some concerns. I don't want to go into it too much. I think the red card against Declan Rice is very, very tough to give. It is the letter of the law, but we know that things don't operate with the letter of the law. And I think, like, as a referee, you have to look at the game and the feel of the game, and you have to realize, like, just read the room and see what's going on. And yes, he knows what he's doing, and I do think Rice is to blame. You, as a captain, and as one of the leaders of the team, you should be aware that you're on a yellow card and don't do something like that. I do think Veltman does deserve also to get a yellow, or at least even a red as well, because he also knows what he's doing when he kicks it towards him.
I agree.
I think it's kind of like 6.5 dozen here and there. I will agree with you as well that I do think that they had a lot of chances and they could have won the game even at 10 men. But on the other hand, it shocked me how vulnerable they were without Rice, because they just start getting peppered by Brighton, who was a pretty decent team, but they're not like top 4 team or anything like that. But I'm kind of concerned that especially with Marino out for a few weeks, their new signing, Rice isn't going to be there. We know Thomas Partey is probably going to slot in, but that North London derby could be a really interesting one with no Rice there, and how they looked vulnerable, especially with at 10 men.
The thing that'll make them a little more comfortable going into the North London derby is that Ange's team can't defend either. So there's goals to be had when you're playing Spurs. Yeah. Honestly, their backline is leaky as well. So if you're a betting man, I would take the over on that one, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of goals, despite that being a cagey affair. And to be clear, when I said that I think that kind of game wouldn't happen to City, performance-wise, yes. City can drop points because they can be a little sluggish, whatever. I meant the Declan Rice kicking the ball away, and I'm glad the way that you framed it, I think, is the way that I think it should be framed. He is the captain, and I understand that human beings are human beings, and even players that I love sometimes have a hot temper and they lash out, but I feel like you should know where the limit to lash out is, especially if you're a captain and you have played enough to know. Sergio Ramos was a master at it, master of the dark arts, because he knew what the line was. And actually, Casemiro was too, and probably still is. They would get right up to the line of doing those little tricks, of doing the little things to get under people's skin, but they wouldn't cross it. They wouldn't do anything that you would usually that you would say, well, that has to be a yellow, that has to be a red. That they would do just enough to keep themselves safe. And why do that at that time if you're Declan Rice? You know how important you are to your team. There's no one else on that squad, especially with the new injury to their signing, Marino, that they can play in that role. So it leaves them down. It leaves them down a man going into one of the biggest games of the season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they adapt to it. I do think they're defensively sound. I do think the goalkeeper is good, and Arteta's system is there, but I'm interested to see how the team gels when Marino does come back in and, Rice is there. I think Marino's probably going to play as the 6, as the defensive mid, and Rice is going to slot in ahead. It'll be interesting. I do still think that the lack of the striker is the biggest thing for them to not win the league. When I look at it, I still think I pick City. I mean, do you think I'm wrong for picking that?
Yeah. No, and we can touch on them now. I think we've gotten what we needed to say out of Arsenal. They're doing really well. The game against Brighton, they still did well. The red card was a bit harsh. We'll see how they bounce back. You can't drop too many points is the problem. But talking about City, no, I think City's the obvious choice, and it's because of one person, Erling Haaland. He scored another hat trick. He's up to 8. He's 4th on the list. And when you look at the people above him and how many games they played, and they to reach those numbers, it's like Robbie Fowler, Alan Shearer, and Aguero, and they played hundreds of games. And this is his his 3rd season. I heard someone describe it once as when you play Manchester City, you know that they're already a goal up because of Erling Haaland, and I think that's the only way to say it. It's
that's a good way of putting it.
Because he scored his goal return rate is at a goal, over a goal a game. It's insane. He is, for all the talk about he's a League 2 player, according to Roy Keane, with the ball at his feet. Can't do this, that, and the other. And all of that may be true. He's not going to do the Benzema, the Harry Kane, drop real deep and bring the ball up or unlock a pass for one of the wingers. But you know what he does? Finds space, moves into it, attacks it, is so physically strong and fast that none of these... I do disagree with Pep when he said that no one can stop him even with a gun. Rudiger has stopped him a couple times, Pep, and you know that. So let's play... or else you'd have a couple more Champions League trophies. But Rudiger is a crazy bastard, and he'll stop him. But
Check the back pocket.
yeah, but no one in the Premier League, no center back in the Premier League feels like they can stop Erling Haaland. Like,
yeah, maybe Saliba, Van Dijk. I don't know.
I'm so out on Van Dijk now. Like his prime was like 2 or 3 seasons, but that's a different conversation. When people try to put him into like Sergio Ramos conversations, for instance, I'm like, you gotta
get angry.
I was like, you gotta learn where the level is. I don't think, but yeah, if you were gonna say, I think Saliba and Van Dijk are the only ones that I would even entertain could have a chance, and more Saliba for me than Van Dijk, but
yeah,
that's just my bias, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about City in the first episode and their lack of moves, but I guess they didn't need it. They didn't really need anything. When you have the best center defensive mid in the world, and you have one of the best midfields in the world with Grealish, and then Stones hasn't played yet, because he's injured and he's still getting back into form. But they're playing that weird like 3-2-4-1, but like in possession they go into like a 4-3-3, like kind of out of possession. But Rico Lewis is almost playing in midfield, as the right back, like coming in inverted. Kovacic next to him looked good as well. And, we know they signed Savinho, got him over from, the City group from Girona. He looks like a great signing, but
looks fun.
Yeah, it looks great. And when I looked at it at the table, like, and I'm looking at the teams, I'm like, who's realistically going to win? I'm like trying to convince myself that Arsenal can win without a striker or, with the new signings that they made. I'm looking at Liverpool, who's done incredibly well, and they have a new manager, and Howard, like, with signing Chiesa, but, there's questions there. And you just look at City and you're like, you have everything. And to touch on the Roy Keane point, I think sometimes you want like great players to do everything. Like you want your striker to be like Benzema and like Kane, like you said, and be a ball player. It's fine if he's not like that because, in some games it's going to cause problems. That's true. But when you have, Grealish and Foden and De Bruyne and Rodri and Kovacic and Silva and all these players, like I can go on, who just feed him.
And you brought back Gundogan on like nothing. You got him for free because Barcelona is a basket case.
Exactly. And a winner, an absolute winner, a leader in the locker room, a goal scorer, a guy who can play almost every position in the midfield. Maybe you just need Erling Haaland to be Erling Haaland. And it's okay if he's not a ball player because he's the best clinical striker in the world. Because like you said, he's finds space, he's aggressive. Bottom line, he scores goals better than anyone in the world. And you can't say that about anybody else.
No. So, and to that point, the last thing I'll say about City, obviously, if you want to say something, feel free, and then we can move on to maybe touch on one of the other big teams we haven't yet. But for me, it's just as simple as that. Erling Haaland is the best at what he does. And even if you want to say that's a very simple skill set, well, it's the skill set that helps you win games. If no one scores a goal, it's a draw. He scores a goal pretty much every game. He's a threat to score a goal every game. As much as I'm not always a fan of Kevin De Bruyne, and I think his best years have certainly passed him, his influence about being healthy has also helped a lot. He unlocks a lot because he also seems to have a good relationship with Erling Haaland and gives him the ball where he needs it and wants it. And I'm sure that Pep is working on more and more players developing that kind of connection. But yeah, he's a monster. We can talk ourselves into Arsenal or Liverpool, and there's still a lot of games to be played, but God, it just feels like Erling Haaland makes that team unstoppable.
Yeah, City's going to get, 6 in a row now? 5 in a row? Or are they on 5 or 6?
I think they're on, this will be 5, because the 4 last year beat United's 3 in a row, I think. Yeah. And then this will be 5.
Let's see. I do want to touch on Liverpool because we spoke about United and we bashed them, but let's touch on the other end because the positive side of it, they look good.
They do?
I've been impressed. I don't know about you, but I didn't think Arne Slot would hit the ground running like this. 3 wins out of 3, 2-0 against Ipswich, 2-0 Brentford, and they absolutely thrashed United. The team looks good. Salah looks good, even though this is his last season. They signed Chiesa, which I think was a steal for just £12 million on like a loan with an option to buy. Ryan Gravenberch, where did he come from? He was kind of thrown out of Bayern Munich squad. He's playing like that deep lying, defensive mid for them. The back line looks great. I don't know. I think if like Arsenal or even City stumble, maybe Liverpool can make some noise.
Yeah, I agree. They look a lot better than I would have thought. Arne Slot Again, and we talked. Not everything is about bashing United or Ten Hag, but we talked about like being humble. And when he was asked about his team's performance against United, he was very candid about what worked and what didn't. And it seems like when you listen to him talk, he didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It wasn't like, we're going to get rid of everything that Jurgen Klopp did because this is my team now and it's my system. He's like, no, there are parts of that system that work with my system. There are parts of it that I like. There are parts of it that clearly works for the players and that makes them the best. It is different in the sense that I do think Klopp's teams had a lot more thunder and lightning and pressure and rock and roll heavy metal football, as it was called, right? Arne Slot's teams seem a lot more controlled, and maybe that'll be good in the long run because it saves the legs of some of those older players, including Salah, who looks like, again, you don't want to speculate too much on a relationship that you don't know. I'm sure him and Klopp are fine, but near the end, maybe he was just getting a bit tense. You get the same voice in your ear year after year telling you these things, screaming at you. You're tired because you're playing not just for your club, but your country year round. It was just time. And now he's got a new voice in his head, and that voice isn't telling him to like bust a gut every time. That voice is playing a system that allows him to pick and choose and to move a little easier at times. So they look rejuvenated, and sometimes that's all you need, just a new voice, a new style. Don't change too much. Like, yeah, we'll still keep what works, guys. Don't worry. Like, you guys have built something here. I'm just going to put my flair on it. So they honestly, I think they're going to feature in the title race. I don't know if they have a legitimate opportunity to push for the title because it is a new manager. Slips will happen. It's going to be a long season, but I think they're going to be a factor.
It is early days, and I don't want to jump the gun, but just based off the way they've performed and the way that he's setting up the squad, I think you put it perfectly. Like, he just basically took all the fundamentals that Klopp had and just kind of added his little tweaks into them. Like, the biggest thing that I'm seeing that is really, really working for Liverpool, especially with the way that you said that Van Dijk is apparently past his prime now, which no, I agree that he is. I think he's towards the end of it, and he's not the best center back in the Premier League like he once was. Don't come at me, Liverpool fans. But I think the biggest thing is that the wing backs are not as high, or at least the right and left back with Trent, specifically Robertson. I'm viewing Robertson as a bit more like back towards the defense. He does use Trent for his offensive abilities and because he can't defend as a right back. But when you look at it, I think he's basically making the adjustments. And for how much we slate Pep for all the stuff and the weird things that he does, I do agree with one thing that he says is that you do need change, and you do need to change players and bring new voices in. And I think you put it perfectly. They won everything under Klopp, and Salah was elevated by Klopp. But just like you said, maybe a new voice was necessary. And Darwin Nunez hasn't even started any of the games. Jota has been amazing in that center forward role, and Luis Diaz is banging in goals, and everybody's looking great. McAllister next to Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai playing well in that 10 role. I think they had a lot of players last season, specifically with Szoboszlai, and maybe even Gravenberch now, which I didn't expect, but who they signed who didn't necessarily hit the ground running. But I think that's that first season in the Premier League that you need to adjust. And now I think this season could be absolutely huge with them. And I do agree with you that if they play the same way, which is a big if, and there isn't any more hiccups, I do definitely think they'll be up there in the title race as well. And maybe, I don't know, put a $10, $20 bet down as a dark horse for Liverpool to win. I might do it. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I'm sure you get pretty good odds even now with their perfect record, and they're an exciting, fun team. You really never know, and there's a lot of talent on that squad. Like you said, I'm bigger on Darwin Nunez than most, I would say, and the fact that he's not even playing because Jota and Diaz are doing so great, and I'm high on Diaz too. I thought he had a great Copa America. So that just shows you how sneaky deep this squad is. And we didn't, again, everyone was like, well, where are the signings? Where are the signings? And they probably still need like a certain player in the midfield to make it a little more solid and work a little more. But they have depth in the fact that some of these young guys are young, are ready to attack this league, have had a year under their legs. You never know. And if this is truly Salah's last dance, so to speak, what better way than to go out on top, scoring goals, showing the fans how much they mean to you. They can show you how much you mean to them. And even if it's not a league, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, deep run in Europe, like those things matter, right? So I do think there's a lot to be excited about in the squad. If we didn't talk about your team, I'm sure we'll talk about them in the future as the fixtures keep coming back. But we did want to touch on two teams that are not in this league, but are two of the biggest teams in the world, and one of them is near and dear to our hearts, and the other one, Well, it's something that we have to talk about because of the team that's near and dear to our hearts.
Just rip it off.
So let's start. Let's start with the team that isn't near and dear to our hearts because I think they're top of the league. They were coming off a 7-0 win against Valladolid, where they really carved them open. I'm talking, of course, about Barcelona. It looks like they're back. The Hansi Flick era. I don't know if I buy that. Where do you land on Barcelona and how they're looking?
They look good. They're impressive. You can't deny it. And, Valladolid is obviously not one of the best teams in Spain, but obviously, Madrid played them and it was a pretty cagey affair. And, we see that they can compete, but Hansi Flick is a pretty good coach. He did incredibly well at Bayern Munich. He won the treble. He didn't fare well with the German national team, but national over to club is a big, big transition. But when you look at the side, everything's firing on all cylinders. No matter how much their transfer policy looks absolutely like in shambles and an absolute basket case, how you have to let go of Gundogan, like we previously said, just to sign, get Danny Olmo registered. And they did that because Christensen is injured. And it's a whole track record of just absolute crazy things going on. They do look good. Everybody looks like they're playing well. The backline looks well. They did lose an important young player, the defensive mid, whose name I'm blanking on, but I will put it in post editing into the picture of the player. But Casado stepped in again in the 7-0 win against Valladolid, and he looks like he's playing well. It looks like Flick is trusting La Masia, and it looks like that's something that Barcelona has needed rather than signing players. Rafinha on the right has looked absolutely amazing. Lamine Yamal looks great. Maybe it's just an easy run of fixtures, but it's undenying that they are looking like the best team in Spain, at least at this moment.
So I don't disagree with anything. Okay, I do disagree with some of what you said, but yes, let's give credit where it's due. I'm not just going to be a hater for being hater's sake, although that is one of my favorite pastimes. They've won all their games. Let's be clear, though. Some of those games, the Rayo Vallecano win could have easily been a draw. Danny Olmo came off the bench, got a goal. Some of those games they pulled out of the fire. Their goals for and against look a little better because they beat up on Valladolid. Like you did say, though, Madrid played that team, and it was a lot more of a cagey affair. They're trusting La Masia more. They have to trust La Masia more. The players that they've bought are awful or hurt, or they can't afford to register them, or they want them to leave. So yes, I do believe that they've started the season off strong. They've taken care of business, and you can't deny that. I don't think they've played a team that's going to push them in the ways that they need to be pushed. Whereas, and this is going to sound super annoying to Barcelona fans, which I don't really care about. Real Madrid is a team that signed one of the best attackers in the world in a position that's crucial and who also kind of overlaps in the position with their other best player in the world, in Vinicius Jr. So it's Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. We lost Toni Kroos, one of the best midfielders of all time. Jude Bellingham is down with an injury. Camavinga is down with an injury. So for the people that are saying, well, they're much better than Madrid, Madrid have had some growing pains because our preseason was cut short. Because unlike Barcelona, our players were all representing their national teams. Some of the Barcelona players represented their national teams, sure. Lamine Yamal, Pedri, Gavi, when they were not hurt. But the reality is, the teams are sitting in a low block against a team that lost a lot of its creative influence. Teams against Barcelona aren't sitting in a low block, and they have a lot of creative influence. The games are more open. They look good. Hansi Flick is a good coach. I actually thought he did good with the German national team, and I think that they should have given him more time. I think he could have come good. It ended up, it worked out in the end. The German national team got a coach that was still, it was very exciting in Nagelsmann and stuff. So all's well that ends well. I do think Barcelona is more of a cohesive unit this year than they were last year. No one was sadder to see Xavi leave as a coach than I was, because I knew that he is incompetent. But that's why I want everybody to pump the brakes, because it's like, well, Barcelona, we're back. Okay, it's 4 games. Madrid, slow start, sure, I'll give you that. But we've done this before. Xavi was so good that he was going to be their version of Zidane. That fell short. I remember hearing people argue about Ansu Fati being better than Vinicius. I remember Ricky Puig. I remember all these players that I was told were going to be their version of that. What Robert Lewandowski's a corpse, and they still have to trot him up there because they literally don't have an option. So yes, they're looking good. But to move on to the other side of it that we're going to talk about, you can obviously give some thoughts on Barcelona if you want. But Real Madrid, Kylian Mbappe scored his first 2 goals. And if I'm a Barcelona fan or a player and I see that and I see how those goals were created, the space that Mbappe found, the connection that is brewing with him and Vinicius, the fact that Vinicius gave him a penalty that he won, that's what would scare me, because it's one thing to put 7 past via Valladolid. They don't have the teeth to bite you back. Madrid are growing in their teeth. It's taken a little bit of we've done some teething. We've chewed up the furniture. The homeowners are mad. Everyone was saying Ancelotti needed to be fired, but they're getting their teeth. So I don't know where you stand on the Barca part of what I said or the Madrid part, but you can take it however you want.
I'll just quickly wrap up the Barca part. I think the best way to sum it up, and you said it, let me see how they fare when they play a team that has some teeth. That's actually one of the better teams in the Spanish top league. And especially, I think they're very vulnerable at the defensive mid spot. Marc Casado looked good, but I want to see when a team actually attacks them and attacks that midfield, how are they going to look like? And let's wait and see. But credit to what is due. On the Madrid side, I do agree with a lot of what you were saying. I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing is that the loss of Toni Kroos. And we know that Modric isn't starting anymore in the team. He's coming off the bench. That you need to manage his minutes. And credit to Valverde, he has honestly been the best player this season, in my opinion, so far. And he has been one of, 100%. If not the best player for our team the past few years. And, he's dyeing his hair blonde. It looks, and he's taking the number 8. He's really like getting into the method acting of playing the Toni Kroos role. And he's a beauty of an assist to Mbappe. But I think losing that type of a metronome in your system who can slow down the play, who can speed up the play, who can absolutely control the path of players. And how many times have you seen it when he just points and Vinny runs and he gets that breaking ball through in the Champions League and La Liga and so many different times? To get that player, to find another player who can fill that position is going to be tough. And Valverde is trying his best and he's doing amicably, and it's going to take time. And Bellingham is injured, and that's a huge, huge loss as well. We don't have a backup defensive mid, and I'm hearing that apparently Chouameni apparently had some sort of like knock or something going on at France training with the call-ups recently.
I heard that too. So, I think a lot of the Madrid players are pulling out just to be safe, to save some of their legs, because Mendy also pulled out. And it seems like they're both going to be ready for the game. I could be wrong. Maybe it's more serious, but that's what I saw reported. I don't know.
Yeah. So I do agree with you, a lot of growing pains. And with Mbappe, like, the way I view it is that it's like, okay, you got the monkey off the back. I think especially in the second game, and the third game, I do think he was trying to do a little bit too much. We were kind of forcing it, and he was kind of getting into Vinny's positions, especially on the left.
I agree.
I do think it could go this way, or he could still possibly, be a little bit up and down. But what I believe is that now the floodgates open. He got the monkey off his back. It's like, okay, now I don't have the pressure of I didn't score yet. Now I think you could see Madrid fire on all cylinders, and be careful because they're coming.
I agree. We're about to be around 55 minutes, so I'm sure we're going to wrap up soon. I do want to talk a little bit more about Madrid, but I wanted to do something because Shayan, and this isn't planned. He doesn't even know what I'm about to do. Because Shayan brought up Fede Valverde and his hair, and because I agree with you, he's been our best player. And actually, my friend asked me and another friend who watches football, like 7 questions. Who do you think is going to be the most important, blah, blah, blah. And I said, Fede Valverde's season is going to be massive. But I am so in on Fede Valverde that I did this.
Oh, no way.
I'm trying to get it right at his color, but so I haven't even told my parents yet. This is how they're going to find out. Man. Maybe I'll give them a phone call. But I got his haircut. It's shorter now.
Yeah, that looks sick. I like it.
Man.
Leave it in the comments what you think. But that looks sick. Everybody's embodying Valverde on this show.
Exactly.
Get the jerseys.
Exactly.
Hang it up in the back.
Oh, I'm fully. If I buy a jersey this season, which I think I'm going to buy either the away, the black, the gray one, or the home, because both of them look really clean. I want to get Valverde's number on it because it's like you said, he's been phenomenal, and I do think Madrid either have to adapt how they're going to play since they don't have Toni Kroos and that ball playing like long, and the things he used to do that you touched on really well, pointing at Vinny to make that run. Even I know Carvajal's missing that change of direction pass, right? Like he's missing that more than anybody. But I do think that they're starting to learn what they have to change and what they can stick with. And Valverde's been massive at that. He's been the best player for me by far. And I would be afraid if I was the rest of Europe, because I agree. There is a chance that Mbappe still tries to force it a little too much. But getting your first goal, your first brace at the Santiago Bernabeu, Vinny was the biggest one, even when he missed the chance earlier, being like, "Hey guys, come on, like give him support, clap for him." I think Vinny, more than anyone, knows how the fans reacted to the transfer saga because he was there, he lived through it, and giving him the penalty, I think, was huge because it quiets down some of those rumors of people being like, "Oh, well, they don't like each other. Vinny's going to be upset that they play the same position." It's no. You cannot divert Friendship FC, okay? You can have your inverted fullbacks. You can have your three at the back. No, the power of friendship. That's what wins Champions Leagues.
Absolutely. I think you said it best there. I think that the biggest safety net is, just like you said, the power of friendship. And to those who know, it's just Carlo Ancelotti and his embodiment and his aura at the club. I think it's going to do absolutely amazing. I'm way too focused on Ruben's hair right now. I can't focus anymore. I'm just going to let you send us off now.
Yeah, so we want to thank you for listening to this episode. We'll be back next week, and we're going to be discussing Champions League format and some of the games heading into the Premier League and any other fun stories. And we'll always bring the analysis, the banter. My hair will not be a different color that show. This isn't going to be a running thing. But yes, we want to thank you for listening. We're going to keep making this beautiful content for you as long as you keep listening and wanting it. So thank you so much. And yeah, have a good weekend. Enjoy the international break.